Jesus gave it all for love. And that's going to be the basis, that's going to be the foundation of our discussion tonight, because I'm interested in not how you express anger, but why you are angry. Joining me now is Dr. Grant Mullen. Dr. Grant Mullen has a ministry to help encourage and empower people living a transformed life. Dr. Grant, welcome to It's Your Call.
Hi, Rob. Nice to be back.
Great. Dr. Grant, let me ask you this question. Just to start things off, we're going to, in a few moments, talk about why people are angry and reasons why they become angry. But, you know, I quoted Paul in Ephesians 4:26, and the verse simply is this: be angry and sin not. And here's my question, just sort of, you know, we haven't talked about this, but here's my question. Did you ever recognize that verse as being actually a command where God says to us, be angry and yet don't sin?
No, I never thought of it as a direct command, but it is a verse that has caused people tremendous amount of head-scratching, wondering what did he really mean, because most of us have always been conditioned that anger is totally wrong and it's always sinful, and Paul is clearly saying that it has a place. But no, I've never taken it as a command. That would be a very interesting sermon.
Well, can I just ask you now, because it's very important, because as you said, people sometimes scratch their head and say, well, be angry, but yet don't sin. I mean, how do you put those two together? There definitely is a fine line, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, actually, I think, and perhaps it's in the original Greek, that I interpret it as when you are angry, because we will be angry, don't sin. So I've taken it as this is an inevitable part of human life, don't sin. And I really enjoyed reading that book by Chip Ingram, Overcoming Emotions That Destroy. And there are so many interesting perspectives on it. And just what Paul is saying is that this anger is common to humans. And then Chip Ingram actually says that this is a God-given emotion. This is a gift, along with all the other emotions God's given us. We just have to learn to use it properly. And I think this is really what Paul's getting at. But, boy, that's been a difficult verse for people to apply.
Well, how we actually begin to apply that verse from a biblical perspective, Chip in his book talks about three types of people and how we basically handle or deal or express our emotions: the spewers, the stuffers, and the leakers. So let's take a few moments and sort of go through each of those, and just from your perspective, your experience, just talk to us about them. So let's talk about, first of all, the spewers. Yeah,
the spewers are the most dangerous, and certainly in all my years in mental health, they were the ones that would most likely be brought to my office, because the stuffers and the leakers never usually see a doctor. But the spewers are the ones that are potentially the most dangerous, because they just spread their anger all over, and they can be very destructive and very disruptive. And in my experience, the people who have the greatest problems with anger, especially rageaholics, they quite often have a mood disorder, and that's what I spent most of my career treating, is mood disorders. So people with depression and more so bipolar disorder are much more. They're unhappy, and they're stressed, and they're tense, and so they explode much more easily, especially a bipolar person. When they're in the high phase, the agitated phase, or the driven phase, they can be extremely irritable. So those were the most severe cases that would come to see me. But of course, the vast majority of spewers are just average people who explode.
Right. Now, can you just...
people who are hurting but don't know how to deal with it properly.
Yeah. Can you give us some examples, you know, someone who is a spewer, examples of how they spew their anger? I mean, you know, was it because of a painful situation in a marriage, or with a child, broken dream, broken goals? Like, can you give me a couple of examples of situations that you're aware of?
Well, for example, road rage. Road rage is a spewer. People have road rage. And people who spew, usually they explode after what you would say the last straw. That's the last straw, and then they just explode. But I would say, and certainly Chip Ingram says this in the book, and I would say this is absolutely true, that anyone who overreacts, it's because there's something else wrong. Or another way of looking at it, here's a very interesting and easy to remember visual analogy. When the ripple is bigger than the stone. So in other words, when the stone hits the water, there's a ripple.
Right.
If the ripple is bigger than the stone, there's something not right. And so if a person's reaction exceeds the cause of the rage, then you know this is triggering something else. So the vast majority of spewers, especially the people who rage, when they're overreacting, it's because whatever just happened is triggering something very painful in their past that they're suddenly flooded with.
Okay, we're gonna talk a little more about that in just a moment. So, but let's move on to the stuffer.
Yes,
Explain the stuffer.
I would say of the three is the least common. The least common, because the way Chip Ingram describes it, stuffers are people who just deny that they get angry. They just say, well, I just don't get angry. It's not Christian. It's not mature, and I'm just not going to do it. Well, that isn't possible.
Okay.
Humans can't do that. So all they've done is they've bottled it up, and you just can't keep it bottled up forever. It will come back and bite you. So they think that they're looking very mature, and certainly on the surface they could, and I suppose you could say that's the stiff upper lip, and they just, no, I'm not angry, I'm a mature Christian, but they are, and it's eating at them. And so this is very unhealthy, because certainly that puts you under tension. Tension then has physical symptoms, and it's very emotionally unhealthy. But I would say it's the least common of the three.
Okay. Now, would it be true to say that a stuffer as well, and correct me if I'm wrong, is an individual who maybe because of a low self-esteem or something in that category where, you know, somebody sort of blows up at them and they, you know, sort of take that,
yes,
and rather than retaliating in a positive way, they just kind of like push it down, suck it down, and say, well, you know what, that person maybe is angry at me because I've done something wrong, and therefore maybe because of past victimization, I'm a victim, it's my fault, I'm guilty, so I'm just going to suppress it and leave it there and just not deal with it and deny it.
Absolutely. It would be a symptom of low self-esteem. In other words, I am not worthy to complain. My status isn't high enough. I'm not competent enough to fight back or to give my opinion. I'm always wrong. I have to take it. And that is, as you're saying, this is a reflection of how people are raised.
Okay.
And so if you're raised in family environment that teaches you that you're insignificant, you're a loser, your opinions aren't worth anything, then those people are very prone to being stuffers, because they've never, in their family environment, they never had an opportunity to express their opinions. They were just brushed aside, and they were never felt important. So those people would be very prone to stuffing for exactly as you say, low self-esteem, because of the way that they were raised.
Okay. Now, it's as you're talking, I'm thinking as well, you know, because of that type of person that they are, they just kind of stuff the anger down. Eventually, how would that come out? Just for interest's sake.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole lot of ways that would come out. Certainly, it can come out physically. There's no doubt that people who are under chronic stress have all kinds of health problems, like certainly stomach ulcers, even itchy skin, just tension, sore muscles. There's all kinds of ways that can come out. I know in the book they talk about depression, and I know there's this expression in the community that says depression is anger turned inward. I actually don't believe that at all. Depression is a chemical imbalance, but certainly if you're a stuffer, it's not going to help your mood.
Right.
And so certainly there are physical things, but it also affects you emotionally, because a stuffer denies their emotions.
Okay.
And so if a person denies their emotions, then it'll be very hard on their relationships, because they will seem so wooden. They're so artificial.
Right.
And there are people that, we've all been around people that you say, I can't get close to that person. I just can never connect to them on a heart level, because they would be stuffers. They have a huge wall between themselves and other people.
Okay. All right, let's move on to leakers. Tell us about leakers.
That, by far, I think is the most common. I would say that would be the garden variety person with anger. So in other words, they're upset, but they know that it's very difficult to express it. It's very difficult to find a safe way to let it out, because they're mature, or they're Christian, and you know, they're in the workplace or in their family. They don't want to hurt people, so they have a degree or even quite a lot of self-control and maturity. So that's good. But they know they're in pain, and they're not going to let go of it. And so this is by far the most common. And so these are people that let it out in small, recurring amounts.
Okay.
So this would be the passive aggressive. I think that is the most common way people express anger in a adult society, passive aggressively.